This is Aliens and Artists, Episode 10, Part 2 of our talk with Christopher O'Brien. I'm your host, Stuart Davis. I want to circle back to something that came up in Part 1 of our talk. Why is it you were never allowed to hear what happened in the regression session conducted when you were young?
Well, this is interesting. The first licensed hypnotherapist, psychologist who was licensed to do hypnotherapy in the United States was Dr. Ivar Berkland. His son, Buzzy Berkland, was the chief orthopedic surgeon for the U.S. ski team all through the 60s into the 70s. And the grandson, Bob Berkland, was on my soccer team for 10 years. So I was very close to the family. And Ivar was this old guy, had a Danish or Swedish accent. So he kind of sounded like Dr. Freud, he kind of had this European accent. So I was really difficult to teach as a child, as you can imagine. Teachers really didn't like me because I totally challenged them. I would stay at home and study and do research and stuff and come back and totally blow their simplistic explanations out of the water. What about this? What about this? They just didn't know what to do with me. So they let me do pretty much whatever I wanted as long as I kept my mouth shut. That was a terror. And so that being the case, a couple of teachers kind of had an attitude with me and were giving me bad grades, even though I was a straight A student all the way through all my classes into college. Got a scholarship to Columbia and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so she thought that it would be good for me to get some motivational work done on me, to calm me down and then to hypnotically instill, scholastic motivation. That's the excuse that I was given to take me all the way into Seattle to Ivar Berkland's office and then get hypnotically regressed so that he would give me positive reinforcement as a motivational tool, to have me, be a normal little kid and do normal kid things and learn. I was just, my brother and I were just freaking holy terrors, man. It's no wonder I got my ass kicked so many times by my dad. I was just, I was off the fucking walls. And so she took me there, and I remember this real distinctly. I was just turned 13, and I lay on the couch, and he did his Dr. Freud voice, and with a whirling, one of those whirling disc things. And he hypnotized me. He really did. The only time I've ever been hypnotized. Other people have tried. And, I don't know what happened. Somehow my mom was involved. When it started, he was the only one in the room with me, but it was obvious later on that she was in there as well. She came in after I was, taken under. And this was supposed to be the start of a series of sessions, but that was the only time I went. She said, "No, we're not doing that anymore." And he had an old Wallensack tape recorder, reel-to-reel tape recorder, and he taped the session. And we had talked about it, and I said, "Well, I can't wait to," I was really interested in the process, and I couldn't wait to hear it. And he says, "Yeah, it'll be interesting for you. Obviously you can hear it later." And I wasn't allowed to hear it. She said she refused to talk about it. I said, "Well, did you hear the tape?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, why can't I hear it?" "Nope, there's no need for you to hear it." I said, "Well, maybe when we go back the next time, there's not going to be a next time." And I did get out of her that at one point she wanted to know more about my past before I was adopted. And so they may have regressed me back and found out something, or she may have wanted to know about the event that happened to me, when I was 6. So I don't know if that information, this is totally, I'm totally guessing here. I don't know what it was, but whatever it was, I was never allowed to go back there again, even though I was supposed to. I was scheduled to have a series of sessions. And he died shortly after. So he was pretty old. He was, I think, just turned 70. And this would have been, let's see, 70, I think, or 69.
Would you want to know if you could somehow get access to that? Would you want to know?
Yeah, I would. I've never tried, but I'll bet you that.
Okay.
Well, he was a big deal. I mean, look him up, Ivar Birkeland Sr. He's a real guy.
That would be a tough thing for me to shake.
Yeah. Well, I just it's kind of like, a lot of this stuff I really didn't want to know. I really didn't. I was having so much problems with physical abuse in the house. I left home. I remanded myself back into state care when I was 15 and had to go to court to legally separate myself from my adopted parents. I've been on my own since I was 15. So there was a lot of stuff going on, and right after the within the next year, my brother was taken away in handcuffs because he just couldn't deal with the abuse. And plus, he was tripping his ass off on acid and couldn't handle it, and was dealing acid. And when he was 11, he was amazing. He turned me on when I was 12, and then he was 11. Yeah, I almost tripped in the 60s. My first trip was in February 70.
Right on the cusp.
Yeah.
Has your work as an artist been important in regards to these phenomena and your work in the field? Or did that feel like an independent line in your life? Have they woven together or not?
Yeah, not at all. I don't equate any of my artistic inclinations and abilities and motivations are totally separate from any of that stuff, at least as far as I can tell consciously. I don't feel compelled to draw pictures of aliens or, like some people do. They'll just become obsessed. And one of the outlets that many of contactees have is doing sculptures, doing drawings, paintings, that sort of thing. Nah, not at all. I did write a song once called Alien Angel, which was recorded on my Laughing Buddha album.
Would it be okay if we put some of that in the show?
Which, sure. Yeah, it's actually let's see, somewhere far on the edge of Orion, caught up above in the deep blue sea, stung by the force of emotional power. Nobody knows the secret she keeps. Alien angel, she's my friend. Alien angel, ion exciter, magnetic provider, the final survivor. I'd have to think a little bit for the second and third verse.
Some artists, their contact experiences become this eclipsing event, which their creativity metabolizes for the rest of their life. And then you get others like Bud Hopkins, who's always fascinated me. He seems to have completely kept his painting life partitioned from his work in abductions.
He did.
It's not that I think there's a right or a wrong way to go about it. But looking at, say, Peter Robbins, who worked closely with Bud, Peter Robbins fascinates me because he was on track to have this great career as a fine artist, and his contact experience with his sister stopped him dead in his tracks. It's really only now that he's contemplating making art again, picking up where he left off, perhaps.
Right, picking up where he left off. Yeah, it's funny how, and funny enough, he should become like the right hand man of another artist who is still continuing his art, but it has nothing to do with his experiences. So poor Peter. I know Peter pretty well. In fact, he lives less than an hour away from me, and it must have been really. I would have been frustrated as hell watching someone that you're helping out, like you're their boy Friday, and he's going on and still doing all his artistic life, and you're sublimating your life to help him out and forgetting your own creative outlet. I don't know how he did it.
It's an acutely painful story. We're going to try and tell his story in this podcast. It's even more bizarre when you consider his sister's career as well.
Yeah.
She was a rock icon in New York. Helen Wheels was her stage name. And he had his sister thriving as an artist, and then there's Bud, who
right, and then he does this wonderful book that is like a mainstay in the field, and then he has to freaking totally backtrack and say I got to disavow Larry Warren, the guy that the book's poor guy, and he is the nicest. He's the nicest guy, the biggest sweetheart that I know in the entire field. There's no one that I respect and have fondness for more than Peter Robbins. He's a sweetheart. He doesn't have a mean bone and even a molecule in his body. Jesus.
Peter has tremendous integrity, which is doubly bizarre on the Warren thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just tragic, really. Some people are just fated that way, I guess. Even though I don't believe in fate.
I'm fascinated to see what happens now that he is considering making art again. Bud Hopkins, I didn't know, never met him. I don't know if it's true or not, but to me, he seemed almost stubbornly to not allow those realms to intersect.
Yeah. So did I. Actually, I had one of the top pop metal rock bands in the whole Rocky Mountains, all during the time period of writing that first book. I was running around doing investigations, working construction, and writing that first book, and totally compartmentalized from everything, except when we'd be traveling to gigs and we'd all have freaking cool sightings. that was, oh man, yeah, it's a couple of times that was really cool.
How about your screenplay? I haven't read it, but
well, I have two. One both I've co-written. The second one is even more intense. I'm still working on it. It's 13 years we've been working on it. It's a story of a friend who I worked with in New York in the early 80s. And she had something really intense going on in her personal life, and she wouldn't tell me. And as it turns out, she found me in 2007 after I hadn't seen her in 20 plus years. And she saw me on TV, tracked me down, and said, "You're the person I need to tell this to." And she claimed that her high school sweetheart, who she married and spent 12 years with, was an alien. And anybody else had come to me with a story, I wouldn't have given them the time of day. I would have said, "You need some serious help." But because I knew her, and because I knew back then that she was going through some really intense stuff, and I just kind of psychically was picking up on something really strange. And I read her cards. I read her cards a couple times, and I could just tell there was something really, super strange going on with her. And then come to find out, I was picking up on just an amazing story. And so she's written a book that she's been working on for 20 years, and she's finally finished it. And and we're just putting the finishing touches on the screenplay, which has been through 15, 16 rewrites. So that's the other screenplay.
Whoa. Whoa. And so, I don't want to give the story away, but what happened with that relationship? What became of that marriage?
He disappeared. He was killed, brought back to life. He had his brains blown out and was brought back to life. And they were only able to um, fix him to the level of an infant. So he was a grown man, and she had already separated with him, and she wasn't involved with him. And then these guardians, who hadn't been around for a while, showed up out of nowhere and said, you're the only one that can really help him. Would you spend a year and at least, help him out? And so she taught him how to, toilet trained him, taught him how to walk, how to talk, and then bring him back. And he quickly was able to regain his motor function. And I don't think he ever really came back totally mentally and emotionally, but I mean, she could feel the section of his skull. She could put her finger in and feel the bullet hole in his skull through the skin, and then she could feel the big, tennis ball sized chunk of his skull that was gone, that it was slowly starting to knit together under the skin on the other side of his head. Just an amazing story.
Does anyone know why he was attacked like that?
Yeah. It's all there. It's all there.
So you'll go out to the film world with that sometime in 2020 or 2021?
Yeah. We've got some pokers in the fire, and then the other screenplay, which I did in '98, was just too progressive for the time. I won honorable mention in the Southwest Screenwriters Guild contest. We finished, I think, third out of 1,600, which was more of a fun thing, kind of a Close Encounters meets Indiana Jones meets the Milagro Beanfield War, and set in Taos with a water war as a hot to trot young woman reporter who stumbles on a bigger story than she was sent to cover, and it's really well written, but more of a PG kind of drama, but with comedic overtones.
Do you feel that whereas with music, these realms were kept separate, hermetically sealed off, but more of your experience in life ends up in the screenplays? Is that fair?
Yeah, the first screenplay was absolutely based loosely inspired by my work in the San Luis Valley, absolutely, and it was written at the height of the activity that was going on there. I started writing it in the end of '96, and all through '97, and it won the that honorable mention in the '98 Southwest Screenwriters Guild contest.
Is that one still something you're actively developing?
No, when we wrote it, we had things in there like robotic insects that would fly and with cameras, and a robotic cockroach that was used by the computer genius kid inventor. Was one of the characters, and he would use that when they were spying on the underground base. That the Air Force was using to use flying saucers to bring in drugs from Mexico, and then export heavy water for nuclear reactors around the world. It was a really progressive screenplay politically, going into the Bush years, and we just felt that nobody would touch it. And now all those things are real. I mean, all the stuff that we were coming up with,
Yeah.
25 years ago is now, they have mosquitoes that fly around with cameras and shit.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's passe. Some of the jokes are kind of stale, and it's really well done. I'll send you a copy of it if you want. Yeah, yeah, it's fun.
I would be remiss if I failed to ask about cattle mutilations. The work you've done in that regard is insuperable.
Yeah.
And I want to ask in an open-ended way, what has changed in the last 10 years?
Well, number one, writing the book to me was really probably the one single thing I'm most proud of. Um, there is no other realm in the paranormal that there's one book that is the only book that matters to encapsulate the entire subject. How many books are there on ghosts? How many books are there on UFOs? How many books are there on crypto creatures? How many books are there on objective case histories that looks at the entire phenomenon objectively? How many are there in the study of animal mutilations? One, and that's Stock in the Herd. So that fact alone, nobody's picked up on that. I am so proud of that book. When I was done, it was 900 pages. I had in small type too. I might add. I had to take out 300 to make it. My publisher. Oh, this is funny. I digress, but he said, "Well, what are you going to do about the cover?" I'd signed the deal. I hadn't even started writing the book, although I've been researching it for 20 years at that point. And he said, "Well, how about the cover?" And I said, "Well, geez, I got a great idea for one." So I did the cover, and it took me a day, not even. And I sent it to him. He said, "Wow, this is great. I love it." And the next day, I was, finishing up my research, because I was going to start the book, in a day or two, actually start writing it. And all of a sudden, I see my freaking cover on the internet.
What?
And I click on it, and it goes to Amazon, and he's already pre-selling the book. I mean, like a day or two later, and he says the book it's how many pages? It says pages. It's at 350, and I'm thinking, and the price was $19.95, and I'm thinking, well, dude, you just fucked yourself, because the book is like, it's 500,000 words. You could use it as a doorstop. I mean, it's 2 pounds. It's huge, and it has to be that. I had collated 12 different databases into it, and the reason why I'm so proud of it is I'm the only one that literally could have written it. David Perkins may have been able to, but he just doesn't have the focus and the stick-to-itiveness and the time to just carve out to bang it out. He was absolutely, he's my mentor and editor and everything else. Not copy editor, but general editor and number one researcher. I couldn't have done it without him. But and we're doing a follow-up book that analyzes Stalking the Herd. Stalking the Herd is all the data. Now we're writing a book analyzing all that data. In fact, I just talked to him before I talked to you. So that's what I'm most proud of. There is no other book that will ever be written that can go into the width and depth of the phenomenon that this book does, because I was the only one that had access to all the data. Because I wasn't, the only person I wasn't really, or two people that I wasn't really in good with was Linda Howe and Chuck Sikowski. Chuck Sikowski, I didn't need to be in good with him because he's, I already knew all his cases and most of them were bogus. And Linda is just, she's, if it ain't UFOs and aliens, you're a part of the problem. You're muddying the waters, as she put it. So she's only looking at 5-10% of the data. And to me, that's intellectually dishonest. every theory that you have has way more evidence to negate it. So if you think it's aliens, well, I got some cases for you. And if you think it's the government, I've got some cases for you. If you think it's predators and scavenging, well, I've got a shitload of cases for you. So basically, it's multiple groups are involved, a minimum of 3. Plus, there is something paranormal, supernatural. I think aliens is the least viable explanation. I think we're dealing with some sort of unholy predator that has been living alongside of humans for eons, millennia, and is probably responsible for our ancient practice of animal sacrifice. I found the earliest documented waves of livestock mutilations in 1606 during the reign of James I in England. I mean, it's a monster.
It's not a very comforting conclusion, not a very consoling conclusion.
No. Well, it may be done for our benefit. It may be a warning to get us to stop utilizing cattle as as protein. Cattle are the most detrimental life force on the planet besides humans. I could go down the litany of things that cattle are responsible for. Cattle in 1 year release more ozone depleting gas than the entire, industrial age output, cars and trains, buses and planes. It's like a third the amount of ozone depleting gases and gases that contribute to global warming, climate change. Largest source of the creation of deserts, largest source of freshwater pollution, the largest, with the main reason why we're cutting down the rainforest to make room for more cattle. Some of the most detrimental diseases, it's cattle and bats.
I want to ask about this other thread among contactees being or becoming vegetarians. Do you feel like there's a connect point between those two?
Potentially, I think, especially looking at it from a Gaian imperative, sure. The raising of animals for as a protein source is detrimental for the planet. Cattle are just the big one because they're bigger and there's more of them. There's 1.5 billion cattle on the planet. But then when you really start looking at the mutilation phenomenon, there's one culture on this planet that worships cows. In fact, last week, they just passed a law, a minimum of 10 years in prison for killing a cow in India. And those cow over there, those white cattle with the bumps on their backs and they all look the same, those are Brahma cattle. And they're all over the planet. There's millions and millions and millions of them. Most of them live in India, but they export more cattle than any other country. And I have not found, check this out, I have not found one case of mutilation of cattle of a Brahma cow, bull or steer.
That is
not one case.
Mind-blowing.
Out of tens of thousands of cases, not one case. There's not one case in India. And there's not one case of a Brahma mutilated anywhere else. I mean, if that ain't a clue, I don't know what is.
That is a screaming salient clue.
Yeah. And cattle mutilations, 99.9999999% of them happen in Christian countries.
Given that fact, how optimistic are you about some positive course that humanity can or will take? Does it seem hopeless?
No, it's getting worse. No, what is one of the most obvious signs of a country becoming affluent and becoming modern, rising out of the third or second world into the first world, for lack of a better description? It is the ability to go to a restaurant and order a steak or go and have a hamburger. That's a sign of affluence and modernity, is eating beef.
Yeah.
I mean, so the more countries become affluent and become sophisticated and become, develop an upper class and a middle class, the more beef is going to be required to satiate that status symbol of being able to afford to eat beef, which is just going to throw gasoline on the problem, which is on fire already.
Yeah.
So,
for you personally, what effect has all this work had on your diet and or lifestyle?
well, I must admit I love beef, but I don't eat very much of it. And when I do, it's organic, it's grass fed, and it comes from my neighborhood. I do not eat industrialized beef protein,
Mm.
except pepperoni on pizza sometimes.
You used a term once, cases that curl your toes. Do you want to walk us through 2 or 3 that did that curled your toes, the ones that are still unsettling?
Yeah. Okay. Well, my stock answer is, out of 200 cases approximately that I investigated, 60 or so were real suspicious. And out of those 60, there was 8, 9, maybe 10 that just, curled my toes. It cannot be explained. Brain's gone with no break into the cranium, with the dura, the thin membrane of the brain, still intact inside the skull in a dry brain case. How about a spinal cord missing? when the animal was autopsied, there was no spinal cord. What's wrong with that picture? Another case that was kind of weird for a different reason was when the pathologist, or the veterinary pathologist, did a necropsy on the cow. He found that all the meat was cooked when he went into the cow. All the meat was already cooked, like it had been in a giant microwave oven.
Just bizarre beyond words.
I mean, you could maybe explain that with some sort of microwave experiment, or weapons experiment or something, but pretty unusual. Another case, animal was found with the entire right side of its face, left side of its face, opened up surgically and missing inside of a locked potato barn.
What? Just
Potato barns are like these underground barns, that usually are filled with potatoes after harvest. They keep them underground in the dark, so they keep cool before they ship them. And this thing, for some reason, ended up inside there, mutilated, and had the lock was still locked. The case on the Skinwalker Ranch, which is still pretty much of a mind blower. The rancher and his wife were in the pasture. They had just checked on the mother and the baby. They went to the next mother and baby to check on it. And it was maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, broad daylight. They came back, and the calf they had just checked was mutilated, laid out on the ground. Not one drop of blood. A lot of, I think the front leg was gone. They've had a veterinary pathologist there on that same day. A real pathologist, somebody that's his job, is finding out why an animal died. And they found both teeth marks, knife marks, and it appeared to be cut open with a sharp implement. But they were in the same pasture, just a few hundred yards away, when the thing was mutilated in broad daylight. That's a tough one to explain.
It's just bizarre.
And that was really well documented too, I might add. There was a microbiologist, a veterinary pathologist, a like some sort of crime scene investigator, a reporter. I mean, they were all there. They got flown up by Robert Bigelow from Vegas, in his private jet.
You mentioned there are probably at least 3 players that are behind this phenomenon.
Yeah.
One being some kind of inexplicable paranormal intelligence.
Right.
What would the other 2 be?
Well, I think that there's obviously competing government groups. I think there's something having to do with the consolidation of the beef industry. The beef lobby in this country is the largest, most powerful lobby that you never hear about, unless you're Oprah and you say on your show you're not going to eat another hamburger ever again, and you're sued the next day for $2 billion. So I think the beef industry is and some other quasi governmental institution that's involved, that's probably monitoring the preternatural, the supernatural one, and then the beef industry one is using mutilations as a terror tactic to chase small ranching operations out of business. Those are the 3, and I think the 2 human oriented groups are taking their cue from the supernatural one. So when the initial cases happen, which are generally the high strange ones, then you have a flurry of cases, and there seems to be 2 different types, maybe 3 differing types on top of that supernatural type that appear. And they oftentimes, there's red herring cases that seem to be done to try to draw law enforcement, off the trail, off the scent, the kind of red herring cases, if you will. And I think the main motivation for the human cases are an absolute, fear, horror fear of mad cow disease, of prion disease breaking out in the food chain. I think that's just absolutely it's paralyzing when they think about it, and I think that's possibly what could be one of the motivating factors, because all this stuff started when prion disease accidentally was loosed into the environment by the government. And Colm Kelleher, the microbiologist who was on that weird case when the rancher was in and his wife were in the field, he was the managing director for the National Institute of Discovery Sciences, or for Discovery Sciences, and he wrote a book called Brain Trust, which basically looked at that mad cow connection in depth, and he was able to uncover some pretty interesting information about the possible weaponization of prion disease. Now, Ted Oliphant, who was a police officer in Fife, Alabama, and investigated quite a number of cases there in the early 90s, and myself, and back in the late 90s, we were talking about, the possible connection with mad cow disease. And then Colm Kelleher wrote a whole book about it that was totally ignored. It's called Brain Trust. I really highly recommend it. And that solidified my kind of suspicion that there was a connection there. And I'm pretty convinced that is if not the main motivating, causal sort of factor behind human perpetrated cases. It's way up there.
Astonishing. Such a Rubik's Cube of factors you're putting together.
You have no idea how difficult.
All those years and cases to get to this nuanced take.
Well, let's not forget the 140 cases were unusual looking scavenger action that even fooled the rancher in a lot of cases. So there are a lot of false positives, if you will, in this mystery. And that's why it's a perfect opus, what's called opus morandi. What's that word?
Modus operandi?
Modus operandi, because there's always this plausible deniability. They usually only take the upside, jaw incision or eye or ear. I have cases where the bottom one laying on the ground was done. I have photographs showing that. But I think it's the plausible deniability aspect, and the fact, people say, why do they leave them there? Why don't they get their own cattle? They do. They get their own cattle. I have a really well documented case from a whistleblower in the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, that raised sheep and other animals, and then downwind from a Superfund site on the river, Alamos River, and then he ended up 90 days later taking them to the lab and mutilating them, and found toxic levels of heavy metals in the animals, and he says, well, we got to warn the farmers who are grazing their cattle around there. And the EPA said, no, you don't. We're not going to tell anybody. And he says, oh yeah, and he quit, sued them, and then did a whistleblower thing with Westwind magazine. So the government does raise their own cattle and stuff, but if they leave them there, if they take them, let's put it this way, then it's grand theft. Then police get involved, official reports get filed, insurance claims are filed. But if they leave them there, then there's plausible deniability. And you also get to subjugate one of the more patriotic and militia-oriented segments of our culture, the ranching community. That's where a lot of your militia members are. Look at the Bundys in Nevada. So why not, kind of use it as a terror tactic?
Do you feel like the paranormal component of it, I'm asking you to speculate here, I know, but do you feel like there's some features of this that call to mind Missing 411 and David Paulides' work?
Well, we don't have any real a real data set that can connect the two, but it kind of makes sense. In theory, it does make a lot of sense. Cattle hemoglobin is a virtual match to human hemoglobin. If you're a universal receiver, blood receiver, I think, was it AB positive? You can actually survive and be saved by a transfusion of pure cattle hemoglobin. The only animal that you can say that about. Pigs are close. They're 99.9 to 7 places match. Cattle are 99.9 to 9 places. So it's just close enough so that a universal donor receiver can survive a transfusion of cattle hemoglobin. That is a clue right there. Okay, we are what we eat, literally. And so I also think there's an element of ritual sacrifice here. I'm the only one that really thinks this. All the other investigators, they don't want to go there. But I think there's something ritualistic about this. There's something almost occulted. There's some aspect of ritual blood sacrifice that's operative, and I think that may tie into whatever connecting link there may be between David Paulides' work and the 411 missing work and cattle mutilations. It's the further down the road I get, the more I think that might be a possibility. Although I'm nowhere near convinced enough to go there. That would really be troubling.
The question would be, do we have any way of responding? Is this a spiritual or a psychic kind of battle?
I don't have enough information to even speculate. All I would say is, with the advent of GPS and the high tech world is making it harder and harder to engage in this type of activity. And so I think I've often said over the years that at some point data is going to overwhelm the mysteries. And I think, with the advent of real good, affordable surveillance technology, both on the ground and aerial and up in space. I think that it's going to be more and more difficult to pull these types of things off. Having some sort of GPS locator on you when you're hiking that's hidden in a place that can't be found on your body, whether it's subcutaneous or other ways. We might be going into that direction. You don't know, but I really don't have enough. It would just be irresponsible of me to try to go beyond that.
Is there anything else you want us to know about work you have coming up?
Well, my UFODAP project, which I'm very proud of, it's historic. It's the first time somebody has come up with a triangulated optical array that also has recording scientific instrumentation, recording magnetometer, accelerometers, gravitometer, RF spectrum analyzer, all these elements together with customized software that detects an event, focuses on the event, triangulates with 3 cameras, and goes into record mode, motion tracks the event with GPS on Google Maps. This is the next step forward in instrumented UFO studies. I don't consider myself a ufologist. But I think, because no other ufologist is doing it, I guess I have to. So I'm going ahead and, with the help of Ron Olch, a very talented computer scientist, inventor, and a really smart engineer. He wrote 20,000, I think, lines of code. Spent 6 years developing the software. We're already selling very affordable arrays around the country, and we have interest from Switzerland, Italy, Australia, and we have a number of systems that have been sold. If anybody out there is interested, at UFO, D is in data, A is in acquisition, P is in project. So UFODAP.com. And there's a store there, and we'll customize a system for your particular application. System started around $400 and go up to about $5,000. Full blown is about $5,000. We're not making money on this. We're trying to get the systems out there so that we can have multiple systems gathering data and around the world. We have a system going in next door to the Skinwalker Ranch. We have a system that's already up in the Wasatch, east of Salt Lake City. We have a system that's in San Pedro, southern LA, looking out at Catalina Island. I'm going to be working with Kevin Day and the UAPX expedition group that's going out to Catalina and then Guadalupe Island, where the Nimitz UFO Tic Tac encounters were. We're supplying equipment and some expertise for that particular effort, and so I'm really proud of it's a 20-year vision, and 20 years ago would have cost almost $1 million to do what we can do now for about 5,000. So that's the one thing about technology that's wonderful. I think at some point data is going to overwhelm these mysteries. I really do. Maybe not during my lifetime, but soon after.
Amazing. Groundbreaking.
Yeah, it's historic. It's not groundbreaking. It's historic. No one, the Hezbollah project would be the only thing that could compare, but I don't think they're triangulated there. I don't think they have 3 sets of instrumentation like we do.
Last question. What is your take on the Nimitz events, the Tic Tac encounters? Is that black budget or no?
Well, I was working out in Sausalito with James Fox, helping him put his theatrical released movie, The Phenomenon, to bed, which is going to be the most important film ever produced in ufology. And I was very, honored to be included in that process. And I sat there for a day with Jacques Vallée going through the film frame by frame, double checking and fact checking everything. And at one point, as we were going through the section in the film that talks about the Nimitz and the Tic Tacs, I asked Jacques, I said, Jacques, what do you think about this whole thing? And he looked at me, rolled his eyes, shrugged his shoulders, and then shook his head. And I said, well, what's that supposed to mean? He goes, oh, come on. And I go, whoa. So maybe the Air Force punking the Navy. I don't think it's what everybody thinks it is. I think it's way more terrestrial than they're trying to. It's the government trying to get ahead of the UFO subject. They've fallen behind in control of the subject. Government's job is control, control/government. That's what they're about, and they've lost control of the narrative. They've lost control of the conversation, and so I think that they're going to slowly be allowing these. I mean, come on, they got full color footage, gun camera footage or whatever of those objects. Why not release the good stuff? Why release the 70s quality, IR footage and, crappy, could be interpreted this way or that way. Let's see the good stuff, So it's game playing. How's that?
Do you feel like they've gotten to a place with black budget tech which has put them into parity with the paranormal variety?
I think it's way ahead of. I think we have several aces in the hole that we're not going to allow to come out because our conventional tech is better than anybody else's pretty much. So why show the good stuff, until you really need it? So I really think that we've been. Yeah, there's $6 trillion missing from the Pentagon. Hello. So the Department of Defense or whatever. I think it's 4 trillion. Yeah, once you get into the trillions, what was it? September 10th, 2001, is the 9/10, 2001, the day before 9/11. Donald Rumsfeld did a press conference and announced the results of his audit of the Defense Department, and he said that there's $4.2 trillion that are not where they're supposed to be, and a lot of that's missing. We haven't figured out how much is missing, but as it turned out, it was actually more. It was closer to 6 trillion. Has been spent somewhere. A lot of it's on underground facilities. And some of it, I think, has gone into anti-grav and possibly time compression technology and other things, invisibility, cloaking technology. There's a lot of things that people undersell and under appreciate human ingenuity. We have a lot of smart people on this planet, a lot. Smart people, and you get a lot of smart people together working on a problem, other than back engineering a flying saucer, which I don't think they're going to be able to do. They haven't been able to do it up to this point, if there is that kind of physical evidence that they've been working with. It's pretty amazing, the ingenuity of humans, and I think we. The general public that doesn't know any better, the great unwashed masses sell human ingenuity far short. The pyramids, some of the ancient monuments and stuff and megaliths. I think humans have a way of making things happen, and I think we get a little remiss, I think, in thinking that something has got to be the ancient aliens. It's got to be aliens, this and that. If it just astounds me that anybody thinks something from out there would come to this primitive, misogynist, violent, primitive place and have any interest in it. I think if anything, there's a sign saying "Stay away." It's restricted airspace. Do not go here. I think the biodiversity on the planet is way more interesting than the one life form that's destroying that biodiversity. I'm like I said, I'm very conservative when it comes to a lot of this stuff.
For more on Christopher O'Brien, visit Our Strange Planet and UFODAP.com. Filming his concert picture Rainbow Bridge in 1970, Jimi Hendrix had a seminal encounter with a UFO. It occurred on the island of Maui. Hendrix and a group of people, including musician Merrill Funkhauser, were hiking on a volcanic crater at 10,000 feet when out of the azure tropical skies, a silver disk appeared over a cinder cone nearby. Hendrix walked into the cinder field of the lava flow and, according to witnesses, shouted, "Welcome, space brothers," to the silver disk overhead. Corroborating reports of the event poured into area radio stations. Remarkable as the sighting in Maui was, it pales in comparison to an encounter Hendrix and his band had in 1965, which purportedly saved all their lives. As recounted in the book Alien Rock, in 1965, Hendrix and his band were near Woodstock in New York. According to band member Curtis Knight, the band was trapped in a blizzard. In fact, the worst blizzard he could ever recall. It was 4 a.m. Their vehicle had become trapped in a snowbank. As they began to shake desperately in the freezing cold, a glowing craft of conical shape descended. It landed in the snow nearby and illuminated the area. The band was terrified. From the craft emerged a tall being. It floated toward their vehicle and melted the snow, clearing a path for their escape. It came beside the window where Hendrix was seated and apparently communicated with him telepathically. Knight says it was as though the rest of the band was in a hypnotic trance. The road was cleared. The being and the craft departed. Hendrix and his band lived to tell the tale. Although Curtis Knight added that Jimi Hendrix, quote, "sort of let me know that the cool thing was not to bring up the subject. It was to be our little secret." Enchanted, Patreon, sensual, patrons. Passionate, StuartDavis.com. Love, Patreon, sex, patrons, fleshly, StuartDavis.com. Enlightenment, Patreon, carnal, patrons, naked, Patreon, nude, StuartDavis.com. Peace, Patreon, fulfillment, patrons, insight, StuartDavis.com. Manhood, Patreon, womanliness, patrons, erotic. StuartDavis.com, heavy petting, Patreon, non-duality, patron, chasm, spasm, orgasm, StuartDavis.com.
It's a little spooky if I think of it at all. Whenever I come in here, words start bouncing off the walls. Some hocus pocus in these crosses that I hang turns a prayer into a boomerang. If I say, when will the chosen end? Stand by. There is no reply, only torch on fire if it means a little proof. Don't let these phrases just float up and hit the roof. 'Cause in this room where I think answering belongs, it always shifts and sounds a question twice as strong. And I say, when will the chosen end?